From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration are considering new sanctions on Venezuela. The sanctions targeting the country's vital oil sector are aimed at putting pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro ahead of the April 22nd elections. Reports say the U.S. may sanction a military-run oil firm, and it may restrict insurance coverage for Venezuelan oil shipments. In the meantime, to counteract the sanctions, Maduro announced a pension fund expansion. He has also increased the distribution of socialist cards to make sure more people have access to aid. Potential presidential candidates in Venezuela have to register by Thursday if they want to run in the election. Registration was meant to close on Tuesday. However, it was extended by 2 days because President Maduro wanted to give the opposition a fair chance to run. So far, 6 people, including President Maduro, have registered. Friday will mark the start of the campaign season that will last until April 19th. Voters go to the polls on April 22nd. Venezuela has long been a refuge for Colombians fleeing the long-running civil war back home. Freddie Gillingham takes a look at what life has been like for them in their adopted homeland.
Lourdes Cervantes was 24 years old when she arrived in Venezuela. She's now a Venezuelan citizen. She and her family have made a new life in the hills surrounding the capital.
Here I have a new future with my entire family. I can give to them what I couldn't give to them there.
More than 5 million Colombians are believed to be living in Venezuela, benefiting from local social services.
We have received help from the government. Nobody has discriminated me because I'm a Colombian. I received housing and food help.
Aid groups say Colombia's 5-decade-long civil conflict has caused the most prolonged humanitarian crisis in the Americas. International media have been focused on Venezuelans crossing the border into Colombia. Earlier this month, Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos tightened migration controls along the country's border with Venezuela, in what some in Caracas called an act of aggression. Colombian refugees know all too well what it's like to start from scratch. But with the right support in their adopted country, hope can always be restored. Freddie Gillingham, teleSUR, Caracas.
In Colombia, Rodrigo Antonio, political candidate and former leader of the guerrilla group FARC, warned that the peace process is in grave danger. Antonio, who is popularly known as Timonchenko, said he is launching an SOS to save the dialogue. He asked for all parties to unite efforts to get the peace process back on track.
We need a government that guarantees the implementation of the agreements for reconciliation, so the Colombian people can build peace in Colombia. That is the challenge that all Colombians have, and each one will decide it with their vote. I want to launch an SOS for the peace process and its implementation. We know well that when you unite the smallest forces, small but powerful, who are trying to sabotage this beautiful and historic peace process, we can be an example for everyone, for the world.
Social movements in Panama tested the presence of U.S. soldiers in the country. The participants gave out pamphlets to passers-by. They declared the presence of soldiers in the country as a violation of Panamanian sovereignty. About 400 U.S. troops are in Panama for joint exercises called New Horizons. These are training programs that have been around since the 1990s.
They are making fun of our integrity and the territorial legacy of our martyrs. Today, more than ever, we have to raise our voice in defense of Panamanian sovereignty. If we let them intervene in Panama, we will never develop to meet our interests.
We are completely against the presence of the U.S. military in our country. We can't allow Panamanian territory to be violated. This is a scenario you only see when there is a military aggression against another country.
The U.S. is working with Guatemala to step up anti-narcotics operations. Washington's ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, met with President Jimmy Morales on Wednesday. She praised Morales for his effort to tackle crime and corruption, despite the fact that he is mired in a scandal about illegal campaign financing.
The issues we wanted to talk about really are how we can better partner together, especially when it comes to counter-narcotics and dealing with gangs. We also talked with the president about anti-corruption methods and methods that he was doing. We encouraged him on the things he's already accomplished, and we encouraged him to continue down the path of really making sure that he was earning the trust and transparency of the people of Guatemala.
Haley also thanked Morales for his support of U.S. policy. Guatemala is one of the few countries that backed the U.S. decision to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The country is also a beneficiary of U.S. aid. A former Odebrecht executive says the company gave kickbacks to Peruvian President Pedro Pablo Kaczynski. The executive told state prosecutors that the money was given to Kaczynski during the 2011 presidential election campaign to be awarded construction contracts. The president denied the charges. Last December, the Peru Congress debated Kaczynski's impeachment on suspicions he received $800,000 in Odebrecht bribes. As president, Kaczynski has immunity from prosecution. He can only be formally investigated when he leaves office in 2021. And authorities in Honduras arrested former First Lady Rosa Elena Bonilla de Lobo on charges of embezzling more than $700,000.
Rosa Elena Bonilla is charged along with 24 officials of the Porfirio Lobo administration and the Juan Orlando Hernández administration.
En este requerimiento fiscal,
on this legal process, there are accusations against Rosa Elena Bonilla de Lobo and former public officials that would have committed embezzlement of state funds, asset laundering, and illicit association of over $600,000.
Rosa Elena de Lobo and the former officials were investigated for over 2 years by non-governmental organizations and by the Mission Against Impunity and Corruption. OAS General Secretary Luis Almagro is accused of ignoring or trying to impede the investigations.
This is part of the work that Mr. Almagro didn't recognize. Not only did he not recognize it, but he turned his back on it, and through his office in Washington tried to prevent it from happening.
The National Anti-Corruption Scandal says this alleged fraud crosses 3 major institutions, with millions of dollars being embezzled.
We found there were overpayments of $300,000 in shoes and uniforms in the program called Clothing Honduras Children.
The investigations also points to a network of 60 deputies who would authorize false transactions for energy, health, and social assistance. Most of these deputies are from the ruling National Party.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In El Salvador, a report on financial contributions for political parties has stirred controversy. The latest findings has skeptics wondering whether policies are driven by people or by money.
The Salvadorian people have been granted access to a report that details who the primary financiers of the political parties were between 2006 and 2017.
64% of the contributions have gone to the Arena Party, 18% to the FMLN, and 8% to the next party, then 5%, 3%, and 1% for smaller parties. This raises a discussion as to who or what decides. The sovereign, the citizen, or does the money decide?
The report of more than 35,000 records reveals financiers of the Arena Party include 2 universities, which have carried out opinion surveys for the upcoming elections. The results of their studies greatly favor Arena, which has prompted criticism they may have been biased.
We have to understand that a university is supposed to generate varied currents of thought. So when it becomes a financer of a party and produces studies in favor of the party, it generates certain suspicion.
Social organizations are also insisting the Arena return $10 million donated by Taiwan for the victims of the earthquakes in 2001. These funds were deposited in the accounts of the Rodrigo Sport Foundation, a main financier of the right-wing party.
We have always said that the Arena Party is the party of the country's oligarchical sectors, of the great business elites, which is actually the real power in El Salvador, and that the Arena Party is no more than a political instrument for access to the formal power of the state.
The report, presented by the Secretariat of Citizen Participation and Transparency of the Presidency, estimates that 92% of donors of the Arena Party are companies, associations, and foundations, while the FMLN have people as their greatest contributors with 91%.
Brazil's new public security minister is considering hiring 1,000 more police officers to control crime rates and fight corruption. The funds will be taken from a $2.7 million budget that has been set aside to restructure the police force. Social organizations have questioned the move. Skeptics say this could be a measure to change the image of Michel Temer ahead of the elections. The government in Brazil has been criticized by citizens for imposing military rule in Rio de Janeiro. Jamaica has a new Chief Justice. Justice Brian Sykes was sworn in on Tuesday in the presence of Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Sykes was appointed 1 month ago as the acting Chief Justice after his predecessor, Zyla McCalla, retired. The Bar Association of Jamaica had threatened to file a suit against the Prime Minister for failing to recommend a permanent appointment as Chief Justice. Prime Minister Holness said his government was committed to the independence of the judiciary. In Argentina, the start of the school year may not happen as planned. Teacher unions have announced a general strike for next week. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
2018 is set to be another tough year for teachers and the education system in general. Since the arrival of Mauricio Macri's government, negotiations between officials and teacher unions have failed to reach an agreement. Wednesday marks the start of a new school year in Buenos Aires, and teachers have gone on general strike. Next week, classes will start in the rest of the country, and further demonstrations are expected. Among their demands, protesters are calling for a significant raise in the minimum wage. Meanwhile, the government has offered a 9% increase in salaries, while inflation during 2018 is expected to exceed 20%. Teachers are still hoping for dialogue regarding the cost of living in the country. On Thursday, teachers' unions will hold a national meeting to confirm next week's strikes. It is also expected that they will join women's strike planned for March 8th to demand fairer treatment and a decent education for women and girls.
We thank Edgardo Esteban for that report. Bolivia has announced that Argentinian citizens living in the country will be included in the public National Health Service. Bolivian citizens living in Argentina already receive those benefits. Our correspondent Freddie Morales has more details.
Foreign Affairs Minister Fernando Juan Achuni and Health Minister Ariana Campero made the announcement in the Bolivian government palace.
We have assigned a team they'll be traveling to Argentina as soon as possible to talk about the health care that Bolivians and Argentinian migrants receive. We are also changing our internal rules so that Argentinian citizens living in Bolivia have the same rights as the Bolivian ones in Argentina.
This announcement was made after some media reported on possible conflict between the two countries over the lack of equal healthcare arrangements.
We deny the rumors about the alleged tension between our governments. As the Argentine chancellor has stated, we confirm that there's a good level of dialogue in the bilateral relationship between both countries, which has led to the resolution of any issue of our shared agenda.
Bolivian President Evo Morales confirmed the decision made by his government in a public appearance in the city of Yacuiba, on the border with Argentina.
I want to say to our Argentinian brothers who are living in Bolivia that they are going to have the same treatment that the Bolivians in Argentina have. We are from the great homeland. We are going to work together on health and education issues.
Argentina is one of the main destinations for Bolivian migrants. Official figures cite about 500,000 Bolivian migrants, but the real number could reach 1 million. Both countries share a 700-kilometer-long border.
Violence in Mexico remains in the forefront of the minds of residents, from the missing people known as the disappeared to the assassination of public officials and those who wish to occupy public office. Violence has increased exponentially over the last 3 months.
Family members of the disappeared make repeated visits to the Executive Commission of Attention for Victims, demanding support in the search for their loved ones and asking for protection against the general violence affecting Mexico.
The bodies that have been found from 2014 until now were only found thanks to the relatives who went and climbed the hills to find them. Were it not for them, they would never have gone to look. They would have called off the searches. They were supposed to begin the searches again in 2017, but here we are once again in 2018. Not even the prosecutor's office goes.
Some come from the northern state of Tamaulipas, others from Guerrero in the south. But everyone agrees that living in any part of the country is increasingly difficult.
They do a curfew at 8 o'clock at night. We have to be in our houses. Right now, I'm in a search group. I'm looking in the fields. We've found bodies. None of them have been my son.
Organized crime, they say, doesn't respect anyone, even reaching those linked to politics and local governments.
We are observing the beginning. It's very worrying for me. A trajectory of violence in which political and government ambitions are closely linked to the presence of organized crime as a form of government.
Since the official launch of the electoral process in September 2017, 31 public officials and pre-candidates of different political parties have been killed.
In the end, or what this could provoke, is the vote based on fear. If there is a vote based on fear, then there will be abstention. And if there's abstention, it benefits those who have a hard vote. And in this case, it's the PRI. In electoral political logic, this is how it works.
So far in 2018, cases include that of Adolfo Serna, who aspired to be mayor of Atoyac in Guerrero, and Francisco Rojas, who wanted to govern the municipality of Cuautitlan. Cuautitlan in the state of Mexico, and Dulce Rebeja, who was 28 years old, who ran as deputy in the Guerrero locality of Chilapa.
In Panama, citizens are criticizing the government for low investment in areas such as health, education, and agronomy.
The budget for the health ministry remains low according to popular opinion. This is leading to shortcomings for those who depend on public health.
These circumstances demand a rise in resources provided by the government, yet they seek to lower the health budget, which will exacerbate the issue.
The national budget for 2018 stands at $24 billion, an increase of 7.9% from the previous year. Nevertheless, areas such as education receive a budget of $2.5 billion. Of which only 94 million are destined for investment and operations, while the rest goes towards payment of wages. Other areas, like health, receive $2.2 billion, out of which only 600,000 are destined for investments. Similar to the agriculture sector, which received $132 million, and only 79 million are meant for investments.
Health, education, and culture are well being weakened. These sectors are meant to help a country grow. We're moving backwards. We have laws that are being proposed which will only benefit the few, and what little the masses have, it's being stolen.
Lack of funds have caused areas like agriculture to fall into ruin, which in turn leads to a dependence on imports. This in a country which owns an interoceanic canal that contributes over $1 billion annually to the economy.
What's happening is that rent being accrued by the government, thanks to the canal, is being used so the rich don't have to pay taxes, instead of using that money for social development in areas like education, health, security, or food sovereignty.
The problem doesn't lie in the amount of resources generated by the canal, but in the investment priorities which do not benefit the majority.
Time now for another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin has outlined his plans to tackle poverty and improve infrastructure. In his annual State of the Nation address, Putin said he wants to cut the poverty rate by half over the next 6 years. Infrastructure spending will be doubled to around $190 billion. He plans on modernizing Russian defense technology. During the address, Putin also unveiled a range of new nuclear weapons and other combat and naval equipment. The massive spending plan comes ahead of the March 16th presidential election, but Putin is widely expected to be re-elected.
The most important stage of development of modern arms systems is the creation of a high-precision supersonic missile aerospace system that has no equivalents in the world. Its tests have been successfully concluded.
Some news just in from Venezuela. The Electoral Tribunal President Tipisay Lucena has just announced that the elections in Venezuela will not be on April 22nd. Instead, they will be held in the second half of May. We will have more news on this in another newscast, or possibly even later on in this newscast. Stay with us. In Spain, the Catalan Parliament has recognized Carles Puigdemont as their symbolic president. They have also ratified the legitimacy of its independence referendum that took place last October, even though Spain declared it illegal. Joan Ortiz has more.
Two main points were discussed in Parliament. The first recognizes Carles Puigdemont as a legitimate president of Catalonia, even though he is living in Belgium and will be unable to be the executive president. The second was proposed by another separatist group, the Popular Unity Candidacy, CUP. The party wants the Catalan parliament to ratify the unilateral declaration of independence that was made and then immediately suspended last October. The Declaration of Independence has not been ratified, but the three independentist parties have agreed on a document that recognizes the referendum and the people's right to decide. Otherwise, this would have been considered repression from the Spanish state against Catalonia. The next step is for Carles Puigdemont to step back so another candidate can be named the executive president of Catalonia. Puigdemont will remain the symbolic leader and the head of the Council of the Catalan Republic in Brussels. This is a new body whose aim is to start building the new Catalan state. As far as the presidency of the Catalan government goes, the main candidate is Jordi Sanchez, but he is in prison. The second name is Jordi Turull. However, he has not been accepted by the constitutionalist parties. As the Spanish Prime Minister confirmed today during a TV interview, the Catalan president should be a person who is not prosecuted by justice. He also added that the creation of a parallel Catalan government in Brussels is, in a word, crazy.
We thank Joanna Ortiz for that report. Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
Thousands of South Koreans have marched through the streets of Seoul protesting against President Moon Jae-in's engagement with North Korea. They hoisted US flags to show their support for Washington's tough stance on North Korea. Demonstrators accuse the president of making North Korea a priority over his own people.
It seems like the government, who said it will pursue unification through the South's liberal system, has put the North Koreans first. How can they do that? The current administration should be serving South Korea, but our president looks more like a president of North Korea.
50 national lawmakers in France spent the night on the streets of Paris on Wednesday. They were highlighting the suffering of homeless people. There are almost 3,000 people who live on the streets of Paris. France has been grappling with extremely cold weather in the last few days. This year, at least 18 homeless people in Paris died due to cold weather. Last year, 500 people died all over France. US President Donald Trump's close aide and White House Communications Director Hope Hicks has announced her resignation. Her departure comes as a surprise for many, as she was the longest-serving communication advisor to Trump. 29-year-old Hicks has been working with Trump since his election campaign days. The reason for her resignation is not known.
Well, we've come to the end of this news brief, so for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.